Awesome. Okay, you guys, so I just got a notification that we are actually live. And what I'm going to ask you guys to do is if you can quickly just take share the live video on your pages while we're getting everything set up. And then we will dive in momentarily and give folks a chance to tap in. And this is a conversation that is surrounding when police offend. And so this is our part two, when police offend. This time, today, the first conversation that we had, for those of you that have been following this series, was with ACLU and with a civil rights attorney. And we talked about when police offend, who holds them accountable. Really, really super good conversation, very informative, with the visible power of accountability for law enforcement, like the chief of police, the district attorney, the faces we always see. And then we talked about the invisible power of accountability. So, who has more power than the power that we see? And so we talked about city council, the city manager, and we talked about the role of the police officers union. And we even delved in a little bit about the police officers' um, uh, rights. Um, so it was really good, very informative. And as we dive in, I will make sure I drop that link in our conversation chat so that you all can follow up with that. Today, we are going into our second part of the conversation around when police offend. And because we are a faith-based organization, and Faith in the Valley does faith-based organizing with clergy and faith leaders, we wanted to bring in some some clergy and some faith leaders that do this work and that are deeply invested in all of the things that are going on in our local areas, statewide, and on a national level. So I'm going to kick it over to Pastor Curtis and allow him to just introduce us, introduce himself, the organization that we do, and then we want to just kind of see who is in the room and who's going to be on the discussion today.
Well, thank you, Tony. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Pastor Curtis Smith. I am the pastor of Destiny Christian Center here in Stockton, California, and also the Director of Faith Leadership for Faith in the Valley. We are a faith-based community organizing network, and basically we are fighting for justice, to keep it short and in a nutshell. And so I'm glad to have my brothers here in the faith clergy that are throughout this region in San Joaquin County and different areas of California with us today to share in this topic matter. So we're going to go through a brief introductions of each person, of their names and where they're from, their congregations or their organizations. Go ahead. I'll start with Bryson.
Cool. Reverend Bryson White, originally from Fresno, California, born and raised. I'm the co-director of Faith Formation, the regional coordinator for Faith Formation for Faith in the Valley in California's Central Valley. I do work in thinking with clergy and organizers around faith formation as connected to social justice concerns. So PhD candidate at Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary, and I'm just happy to be with my folks today, just to kind of chop it up and around some important topics.
Pastor Jackie Hilliard.
I do apologize. I lost audio for. Are we just introducing ourselves? Okay. Well, as Pastor Curtis said, I'm Pastor Jackie, lead servant at Upper Room Ministries. I'm also currently enrolled and in the process of pursuing a master's in Christian leadership, and I'm just happy to be in this space and looking forward to the conversation on the topic. Thank you.
And my name is Tony McNeil. I am a community organizer here in the San Joaquin County for Faith in the Valley. I'm also a faith leader in the community. I do a lot of police accountability work, social justice work, around transformative justice. Don't want to call it restorative justice anymore because I don't want to restore and go back to nothing. When it comes to policing, we need to transform moving forward. What does it need to become? So, and I'm excited about the conversation. So, Pastor Curtis, where you want us to go?
I think what we'll start with the showing the video. I mean, we've had some recent events, I'd say, since this year started that took place here in Stockton, California, involving police brutality. And we've been on this fight for a long time, as Tony had mentioned, throughout the country, right? Throughout the country, we've been in this fight about what this means, as far as the policing system, the brokenness, the woundedness, and all of those things. But here recently, we had this tragic situation happen in Lafayette, Louisiana, where this brother took his own life. He was an officer, and he just couldn't take it anymore. He couldn't take this system that he had been in, trying to change the system from the inside out, and it resulted in him taking his own life. So we're going to show you a video quickly about that situation that we're going to kind of surround our discussion and start it with this.
All right, let me pull this up.
Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Deputy committed suicide after posting a video saying he was done serving a system that didn't care about him or the Black community. 43-year-old Deputy Clyde Kerr III killed himself in front of his workplace at the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office on Monday. Before taking his own life, Kerr made a series of videos expressing his thoughts about the criminal justice system. He stated he would no longer put up with the corrupt system that resulted in the deaths of unarmed victims like Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and Botham Jean.
It's January 31st, a little bit after 1:30 last Sunday. So, here's what it is. I was kind of hoping to see the Super Bowl, this one especially because we got two Purple Knights actually playing against each other. Mr. Tyrann Mathieu and Leonard Fournette. Hope y'all go forth and conquer. And, I don't think it's happenstance that everything is going on at this particular time. So I don't know, possibly, maybe if y'all want to, you should. Like I say, take a knee, but you need to figure something out because this is a moment that can be seized. I think that it should be. So, but yeah, man. I've had enough of all of this nonsense of serving a system that does not give a damn about me or people like me, or just about life in general. And this is my statement. If this isn't something to state that this killing that's going on, especially by the police, which I am, I can't abide by this no more. I'm not having anything to do with this nonsense anymore. Call me what you want, try to discredit me. I have been a stellar deputy in this 5+ years that I've been there. My last email's been sent. It's copied to somebody. I can't be discredited. Never so much as one write-up for maybe some reports being late. None whatsoever. So it can't be said that I was a shammer or anything like that, or I wasn't pulling my weight. And just for contextual purposes, I just want y'all to understand where and what I'm coming from. It's my entire life has been in service of other people. And it's just dawned on me that this time, as of now, needs to be seized because you don't really give a damn about us. That is the truth. That is the truth. I've served with a full heart in the military. After that, got back into law enforcement, and you have no idea how hard it is to put a uniform on in this day and age with everything that's going on. None. And listen, y'all entrust me to safeguard your little ones, your small ones, the thing that's most precious to y'all, and I did that well. Y'all trust me with that. I've had security clearances in the military. That's verifiable. If I was untrustworthy, if I was a threat, would they let me guard the U.S. Embassy in Kabul, which I did. I trained Iraqi police, Afghan national police, and that's not it. But I wouldn't have been put in a position of that if they thought I was a threat. But that has allowed me to see the inner working of things. And this is a demonic system, and it's not anything I can continue to serve and want to be a part of. And this is not right. This is no form of justice. Let's go down the list. Botham shot in his own apartment. How that work? How does that work? Chilling on his couch. I don't give a damn if he had weed in the apartment. You're going to execute somebody for that? Oh no, y'all are good for that. You break up families for a plant. This war on drugs and this nonsense. But now it's starting to get legal because big pharmaceutical companies stand to make billions off of it, and they paid off the lobbyists, who in turn have started ushering the way it needs to go for them. The countless people who are doing time behind that. How do you even make amends for that? You can't. You can't. This Floyd, man, Brianna, this shit's not right. I'm telling you, it's not. If this feels right to you as a person, there's something is wrong with you. This is the furthest thing from right. This is the manner of wickedness that bro. And you're getting away with it. When is enough going to be enough for people? Huh? Seriously. Y'all are radicalizing people, and then when they buck and they want to go against the system because it's not for them, you come down on them with a hammer. I can't. I don't understand this.
That's a tremendously sad video. Kerr was a military veteran and the father who, in one of his videos, said that he struggled explaining Floyd's death to his son. The Lafayette Police Department and Lafayette community are mourning his loss and are remembering him as an officer who was truly committed to his job. Amisha?
It was hard to watch that without crying. And I say that because this man devoted his life, like he said, to helping people. He served honorably in the U.S. military, trained Afghan forces. He's someone who believed in fundamentally strengthening our democracy. He's someone who put in the work. And then he not only saw tragedies coming back here, but he also saw tragedies in his military service. When you're a Black man and you have worn a badge, you have put on a military uniform, and you continually see your people being disrespected. You see the people who are supposed to be in charge of protecting them being the ones who gun them down with no recourse. I think that it weighs on you. And seeing this man basically pour his heart out and to know that he's no longer with us, that is extremely heartbreaking. This man had a family. This man put his life on the line for us. And he's watching police across this country just not care about Black people and dispense our lives like they don't matter. And he was fed up, and not just fed up enough to quit, but fed up enough to take his own life. That is huge. And I think that it speaks so much to what needs to be done in terms of police reforms, but also the weight that many of our Black officers in uniform carry every single day.
Michael, this is the thing is the duality of being Black and a cop is real. And they have to deal with that. I mean, we've seen numerous stories where Black cops have said, man, as safe as I am is they said that the most unsafe I am was if I'm undercover.
Right.
I mean, they said the safest I could be is when I'm wearing the uniform because they're not going to mistake me. And so to listen to in his voice, and you hate the fact that, he didn't just walk away, that he didn't just leave the force and find some other. I mean, he took his life.
Yeah, it's really a tragedy.
So that's pretty heavy. Let me have you guys come off of mute.
Yeah, that's heavy. That's heavy. When the brother said, "I'm fed up," that it made my stomach sink.
Mm.
Like it made my stomach sink. Like, he, obviously, because I know sort of the result of that being fed up, what he ultimately came to do. But I just felt that in a different way than I did the first time I watched the video, Tony. Um, and that fed upness, right? I mean, I think he's, cop or not, like he's capturing the feeling that so many Black folks, the overwhelming majority of us have, that we're just fundamentally fed up with this white supremacist society and the system that's in place that leads us to early death. And and like me and Pastor Jackie were saying before we started, that fed upness is also, to me, when I hear that, like, he didn't even say all of the things he's witnessed as a law enforcement officer. Right. He's not even laying that out. He's laying out the public pieces that we all know about and have organized around or have lent our thoughts to or whatever that's sparked across the country. But he's not even dealing with what he's seen in the Lafayette Police Department. And I think it's those sorts of things that he's experienced, that he didn't share. I can only imagine what he's experienced from his fellow officers, what he's experienced in the field of what's been done to Black folks on a day-to-day basis, how hard he had to try to opt out that system of surveillance and dominance. And we see the toll that it took on him, and it's tragic. It's just tragic.
Let me first say my heart goes out to the Kerr family, and I'm certainly praying for them. That wasn't my first time watching the video either, but as Bryson said, seeing it this time did something to me. I literally felt my lips start trembling. And the brother said, the last thing he says on the video is, I just can't understand. And when he said it, I said, you shouldn't have had to. No one should have to understand. No one should be able to understand. And as he said, if you do and you're okay with this, there's something wrong with you. And so I'm glad to be a part of this conversation, because this has to stop. Can you imagine how many people, brothers, are out there under this kind of distress, just on a daily basis, in this constant state of fright? I tell my wife I don't like to drive at night, and I'm a pastor, and I know I'm not doing anything illegal, and we have a pretty decent automobile, and I don't even want any parts of the police, and I know that I'm not doing anything wrong. So if I know I'm not doing anything wrong, and I just can't imagine the mindset that other people are out there living in, and driving around town, just stress levels on 110 always. What is that doing to our mental health, period? And we can see it clearly with this brother who's having to deal with the conflict of being an African-American as well as an officer, and witnessing these things and not having an outlet in order to get the help that he needed. So I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Pastor Curtis, I know that you were having some technical difficulties, but I know you've watched this video. And so what were some of your initial reactions when you heard the testimony of the officer?
I felt, first thing, it was just a hurt, to empathetic, pain, and just like how long is kind of just the question that came to me, like how long, and here we go with another one, and even though we don't often, I should say, see this, but we know that's involved in this work, that there are numerous, I don't have the statistical data, but there are many numerous numbers of suicides that occur within the police department. And even those that aren't, suicidal, there's still so many mental issues and things of people that have got family members who are in law enforcement. And so as I listened to this brother, man, it hurt me just not only that, but that he saw that this was the only answer. This was the only result, even leaving two teenage sons himself,
Oh my God.
within this world and this system. And as I, as we do, when I listened to him, I wanted to look up and find out more. So I started digging deeper into some of the other stories, and it just resonated with me. Sometimes, when you meet Black officers, and one of the first questions that I usually have, in this work that we're in, it's just like, man, why did you choose, to do this? And mostly it's because I wanted to make a change. I wanted to be, on the inside, making a change. And when I read about him, one of his best friends from college, Kerr's best friend, who was at Lafayette University with him, as he was studying criminal justice, said that he always wanted to make the system better. He said he loved being an officer. He couldn't stand what happened behind things. He couldn't stand that, and it said that he was actually going to resign. And his friend was telling him, in this climate and with all this going on, it would be totally understandable if you made that choice and do that. But then he goes, however, man, the kids are going to miss you. So that lets you know that he was
Mm.
very engaged, with the children in the community, which is what I hear a lot from, officers, especially Black officers that want to go back into their, communities that they are. We have some right here want to go back into the South Side of Stockton, want to be a better change, want to be a positive influence, change that negative influence of policing into a positive one. He was doing that very same thing. And look, and again, at that point that he was told, the kids would miss you, he still stayed, there based on that response for the kids, but then it just got to that he couldn't take anymore. And so it's sad because again, as person of faith, this is another life loss, right? And as we talk about when we talk about the issue of lives that matter, Black lives matter, when the other side's talking about blue lives matter, is that you had this brother who was
Mm.
both, and just him, period, as a life, as a human being, his life mattered, but it wasn't valuable enough to be able to stay in this. It wasn't valuable enough to him. They had basically, this system had corrupted him in such a way to where he couldn't even find value in his own self anymore.
Mm. So when we see this type of policing, and we've seen it historically for years, that is taking place. What I'm learning when the more time I spend with faith leaders and clergy is that you all look at this. The community can look at it from one side. We look at it, from we're the ones that are being impacted by racist policing, over policing, abusive policing. We want accountability. We're making all these demands. However, I'm seeing also the other side in some of the policing work that I'm doing, that officers are committing suicide at really, really high rates. The alcoholism, the marriages that are split up. So what's actually taking place outside when you see offenses is eating away at the very soul of the individuals that are wearing the uniforms. And so, how does your faith cause for you when you show up and you see these things? How do you, as clergy and faith leaders, how do you show up and hold both of those spaces? How do you do that? How do you show up for law enforcement and show up for the community? What space do you hold in that as
You know, he,
clergy?
the brother made a statement that I think he kind of trailed off and didn't finish his thought. I mean, understandably so, considering the sort of distress he was under. He said, it's a manner of wickedness. And
Mm.
he kind of just didn't really complete the sentence, but he was, referring to policing, right? And I was thinking, like, and I'm gonna try to get to the question. I'm just kind of
Mm-hmm.
thought. I was thinking about how his life was situated between sort of two of the primary death dealing organizations in the world, right? So he was a military person right? You know what I mean? Which on an international scale is carrying out United States supremacy, white supremacy, United States supremacy, etc., onto the dark peoples of the world. Then he comes back and he is a part of a policing organization that is doing the same thing, just domestically, right? And I'm not saying that to impugn his character. He might have been in both of those scenarios to try to improve situations, to help out or whatnot. But what it demonstrates, though, is that these cultures that are created in these spaces are death cultures, right? And the death culture that policing is producing on Black life, on impoverished life across the racial spectrum, but specifically to Black folks, it's killing them also, because you can't control the demonic and you can't control death. It takes on a life of its own, and it ultimately will come to gobble up even the purveyors of it. You know what I mean? And so those who are unfortunately who are dying by suicide, whether law enforcement or not law enforcement, I mean, that's a tragic way for one's life to end. But folks are working in a situation where the value of human life is out of whack, and they know it. And this brother's just admitting it, but cops know it. They know what they've done behind the scenes. They know what they've said to people. They know the times that they know they didn't speak up when their partner planted dope on someone. They know that they killed or witnessed people being killed who didn't have weapons. They know the racist and rhetoric that is floating around these departments. And these things are, out of, the Christian tradition. I mean, I would say these are satanic energies.
Yeah.
And those sorts of things, you can't keep them bottled up and come to the job in one way, then go home and be different. No, you're going to go home because you've been operating that, and maybe you're going to beat your wife. That's why law enforcement officers have such high spousal abuse rates. You know what I mean? You're going to drown yourself in the bottle because you're not able to cope and deal with the contradictions of your life. And you can see these same similar traits that law enforcement folks are struggling with people who've been on the front line of gang conflict. It's a similar kind of wrestling, you know what I mean? And trying to deal with the things that you both have seen and committed, you know what I mean? And so it's a death culture, that's gobbling themselves up.
Whew. That right there is deep. What I'm reminded of when you said that, Bryson, is I used to tell my children all the time, you cannot control lying. You think that you can control lying, but you have to partner with the father of lies in order to do it. And he's the one who is in control. So one lie leads to another lie, and before you know it, you're being consumed and controlled by lying because it is demonic.
No, that's right. I feel you on that. Yeah.
Anyone else just have anything that they want to add to that? How does your faith, how does your faith call you to show up? What do you see as a faith leader?
Tony,
I see you.
We're all clergy here. I don't want to go into a sermon.
No, this is a faith space, and this is why. you.
I believe that my faith requires me to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly before God. So when I come into these spaces, I'm kind of reminded of when the children of Israel were getting ready to go and possess the promised land. And Joshua was there. He's commanding, the people. And then the commander of the army of the Lord, the angel of the Lord, comes, and Joshua asks, well, whose side are you on? And the angel says, no. Sometimes we just read over that, you would think he's going to answer, I'm on your side or their side, but his answer is no. And when I come into these spaces, I have to come in those spaces, whether I'm dealing with law enforcement and my community, and let them know there is a way for me to be for you and for you, as long as I remember that at all times I stand for the kingdom of God. And so when I come into these spaces, I have to, at all times, remember, I have to keep that balance, because even with these officers over here who are harassing and brutalizing our community, I have to also see that person as a soul. And so we have to go after uh, uh, getting these people to understand just the basics of humanity, that we're all human, created in the image of God. So when you wrong him, you're wronging yourself. You're wronging your creator. And so for me, that's the position I take when I come into those spaces, that I'm trying to bridge that gap and make them see you're not just harming an individual, you're harming that individual, their family, you're harming your creator, you're harming yourself. And then, as Bryson said, you're going to go home and take that out on your children, because the human mind is not set up to deal with these things. We're not evil by nature. Okay, let's get that clear.
Wow.
We're not. We're made in the image of God, and we need, as clergy persons, to be about restoring that image of God in every person, the offender and the one that is offended. And so we have a balancing act to do, and we have a tight line to walk, but we have to walk it, and we can.
Pastor Curtis, did you have anything you wanted to add to this?
Yes, I'm definitely going to add. I'm trying to put my clerical collar on here, and come with the right thing. I mean, existing in this world is that it's hard. I'm just saying straight out, it's hard. So when you talk about showing up in that space in both places, is that, I'm also the one that, pastor will show up for you. He will pray with you. And then if I see you messing with my wife and my son over here, pastor gonna deal with you. Right? So I have those things that I have to contend with when I'm fighting with my spirit and my flesh and how it wants to, interact. So there's certain practices when we talk about the mental health and we talk about, health, spiritual health and all these things, physical health, is that I realize within this there's so many things I have to do in order for that I have my own therapeutic, ways and my own prayer time and my own grounding and my own faith that basically resonates so that I'm being led of God, how I go in this space. I got to prep, if that makes sense, to go into those spaces so that I can be, the bridge builder, the peacemaker, and also the ambassador, that God has called me to be, in this moment. I think of Romans 12:21, do not overcome, evil, you do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And I understand that that's not good is not me, right? That good is the God in me. And so, when I think about, listening about, we talk about, the things that need to happen within the person, is just as if, just the same way I feel or has come into the realization is that in my Christian faith is that I don't have the power to save. I do not have the power. I said, and even in the commission, a little deeper here, even in the commission, it told me to go ye therefore and do certain things. It didn't tell me to convert. It didn't tell me to do that. It told me to, to actually teach. It told me, teach what I've taught you. And so I have to have that transformation in me. I have to be the first revolution, in that I'm learning how to deal with this, how to understand it. And it's in the understanding that I'm able to walk in and be able to be a bridge to someone else. First, I got to get my first understanding of where is this coming from. And Bryson laid it out. It's coming from evil, right? It's coming from Satan. It's a spiritual warfare that's going on. And so I first must battle spiritually in order so that I may get myself prepared to go into this natural situation, that I don't too become a part of the problem, in the situation, or basically getting in the way of the solutions that are really needed. And then being able to, to walk in that, because how, I mean, we hold spaces to where we're actually in relationship, with officers. And one of the things that I've heard is that there's something about us that
His computer would freeze right there too.
I just say when I hear that, I'm like, I care, and everything.
So wait,
Time,
Pastor Curtis,
these,
you
fleshly
froze.
thoughts that are in my head in the space, but I'm like, that's God. That's God moving, that's God resonating within me in order to even dwell in this space, in this moment right now.
See, you had froze a little bit. So, and yes, I was appreciating that, because when we do go into these spaces, we have been viewed and seen for sure, we leading by faith, we've been deemed as approaching things differently, not as confrontational, not as, like we're looking for that innate, Bryson, good that is in you. We're looking for the God that is in you and trying to extrapolate that and draw that out, so we're going in from that posturing. I wanted to ask Pastor Bryson, go ahead, and then I put up that next question.
Okay, yeah. Let me say this one piece, and and stop me if this is going ahead to some of the other questions. But I'm thinking about sort of the faith element of showing up in the space, and I think this is why abolitionist visions are so important as we think about the creation of the new world. And I'll leave that second part to some further comments, but because the system that's in place is death dealing to everyone, and the destruction of that system and the creation of something new, is salvific for everyone. Even those who are sort of entrenched in the system, in the system. I mean, because we're all a part of the problematic system that we're up against to some degree or another, but those who are maybe like more deeply entrenched, and here we're talking about law enforcement, the dismantling of police surveillance and the way that it functions and the hell and terror that it brings onto Black life, the destruction of that brings new life, even for white folks or Black officers or Latino officers who function within that. You know what I mean? And so I think the dismantling of what already is and replacing it with what ought to be is healthy and helpful for everyone, vulnerable and oppressor alike.
Wow. 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 I've never considered the terminology of law enforcement even being the oppressor. And as you say these terms, they have to be used. We have to look at it for what it really is. So I want to ask the question of you all. The community is saying we want accountability. We want police officers to be held accountable for their actions. From a faith perspective, what does accountability look like?
I'll say it like this. For me, accountability is being willing to look at the truth and deal with the consequences of what the truth reveal, regardless of who's right or wrong. It's a willingness to look at things as they are and deal with it in a just and equitable way, regardless of the size of your bank account, the color of your skin, the connections that you have. Everyone is accountable to the truth. And so we have to first be willing to deal with the truth. So I believe when the community is saying they want accountability, they want to know what really happened. Not what you want to tell me, not the part that you want me to know, what really happened so that I can make my judgment call for myself and not have you tell me what to think.
I'm gonna hop in before Bryson drops the ball. I just want to even I should say, that's not particularly, I say, coming from, I say, just a place of faith, because I believe that is all encompassed. I'm just, a person of faith that believes in this, but I believe that what he listed, I agree with, even as a person of faith. And he gave out these four, Officer Kerr gave out these, I want to say, welcome Bishop, hi Bishop Turner. Don't want to acknowledge you here in the space. But Officer Kerr gave out four things that he listed in his last video. And one of the things he said, the first thing he said is civilian oversight over the police officers. He said peer evaluations of each other and the state of mind where each other are and the things that they see each other do. The third was a transparency. I believe this is what Pastor Jack was saying, talking about transparency of police operations to build public trust. And the big piece right there is that we've talked about trust. We've worked on trust building efforts, but transparency of the operations that happen, transparency of the disciplinary actions that take place, transparency of the results of those actions, that in a public, basically, record of those things that are going on. And then the last one that he called for was the mental health, wellness, supportive officers, and frequent psychiatric evaluations. And so to me, this list basically looks like a list of, if you want to become accountable to the issue that we're dealing with when it comes to police brutality and it comes to the death, the culture of death that Bryson was speaking about, is that these are four specific things that accountability looks like.
That's really good, Pastor Curtis. Yeah. I don't have a lot to add. The one piece that I would probably add would be, and we know this from organizing. We talked about this, and other places have done it, but the breaking the power of the police union, right, and the hold that they have on local politicians, the amount of money that people receive from police. I mean, you can't really run an elected office in the Central Valley without some form of police endorsement, typically, right? I mean, that's kind of starting to shift little by little, but typically people are taking the law enforcement endorsement and they're parading around with the chief of police or the sheriff, you know what I'm saying, to engender themselves, to these voting groups. And some of that is rooted in the connection between police unions and elected officials. And so I think that we have to break that connection. They hold too much power, police unions, over city budgets and over the culture of cities. So I think that's one piece. And some people have suggested this. Forgive me, I don't know the actual data on this and if this has been accomplished or not. I just know that it's been written about and suggested, but around police having to sort of carry their own insurance, right? Because cities are the ones who are paying out for all of this police malpractice. But if you shift that focus onto a law enforcement individual officer, then perhaps you might find them acting differently in the public space. So I think that's kind of like what Ruth Wilson Gilmore talks about, like a non-reformist reform. Like, I think that it's helpful and it moves the needle. I don't think it solves our problems, because the problem is, from my vantage point, is in this society is policing itself. You know what I mean? And so so that might be one kind of added piece to what Pastor Curtis mentioned around what accountability looks like.
Hi, Bishop.
Hello. I'm trying to catch up, and I don't want to send back back into a discussion that may have already happened. But just correct me if I take you down the wrong road, because this situation that we are discussing, even though I'm coming in late, and I apologize for coming in late, I compared it to being a pastor. And many times people don't understand the pressure that is on a pastor. And even if I went to a psychiatrist, they wouldn't be able to help, because I would speak like I had sense, or I was sane. And therefore, the pressure and the obligation that one has for community and for people will override showing any mental breakdown or problems that I'm having, because I can hide them like a pro. and therefore, even if there is support, and even if I went through a psychiatrist for psychiatric evaluation, I probably pass with flying colors. And so I don't know how that's going to play into your discussion. It's an issue that needs to be discussed and brought to light, because if you sit down with any pastor, he knows how to hide what's really going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, that fits. That fits very well, because you have a law enforcement officer that sat on that video and that spoke intelligently, intellectually. He was very clear. He was concise. He was articulate. Everything that he said made perfect sense. And if to the undiscerning eye and heart, you would have not felt the turmoil that he was actually. Oh God, that he was expressing. And Pastor Curtis and I, when we are in these spaces doing the trainings, we actually see this very often. It takes a very discerning eye, and ear and heart to be able to pick up on they stay at this hypervigilant state. Officers do. They are girded and armed. They get up and they're girded. They only probably take off their armor maybe 1 hour a day, and if that, depending on the actual safety net that they have within their home. So when officers go out, they are already in a hypervigilant, guarded state. They have been conditioned through training, through experience, through trauma, dealing with, the community, to never take that guard off, to never be able to, not to engage, not to anything. And that's not to make excuse. That is to give clarity on the state, the mindset, and to house this trauma all the time. To see a dead body. I watched a video of officers and that needed to, the first video that I saw of officers getting out of their car and shooting an individual. I just sobbed. I sat in my car and sobbed. Can you imagine doing that on a regular? That's your regular. At some point, cynicism sits in, and so let's just kind of go hang out there for a second, because that's truth in that. So what do we do with that from a faith perspective? How do we hold accountable that?
Well, let me share I don't have it anymore because and like I said, I compare it to being a pastor. I had a friend that was all the way across the country that I could open up to about anything, which was also a pastor, that I could share all of the pressure and really express where I was hanging out. He lost his mind. And now I no longer have that individual. And I flew to across the country because I kept trying to get in contact with them and they never would respond. And I flew all the way across the country and found out that, and right now they're in an institution because the pressure is heavy. And if you don't have an outlet, I guess for someone, that's what needs to be encouraged for officers, to have someone, anybody, way away or whatever, to be able to talk about anything and everything that you're dealing with. It's your dumping station.
I would add that piece in too, is that, even in your learning and training, sometimes I didn't know what I needed. I didn't know really what I needed. I didn't know how to get for somebody to really articulate when they're asking me for help. When I look at it and put in the context of this officers or officers in general,
right?
I'm thinking that that's also a whole nother aspect of training, of being able to identify, because he's at this point, like you said, he's very cognizant, and very, clear on what he's saying there at the time. So you wouldn't equate it to that he was getting ready to take this action. And so I don't know how to put it there, but I think for me, what I've done, or what I suggest for people, is that once you're able to identify that for yourself, so you can articulate it, like, I need help. Well, how do you need help? Well, it's important to find out, well, I need somebody here. And so I started, even just this year with this work that we're in, identifying, someone that I don't care, if someone I won't get mad at, that if they, pull my coattails, they sit down. Someone that says someone I give the authority, to be like a father and call me out, say that I'm seeing you do too much. You need to sit down, you need to take a rest, or you need to come over, you need to get away, bring your family. I've basically created myself a healing team around me for specific things, because I don't want to put that pressure also on someone totally, and I don't want to be the dumping station, for that. But I wanted to get permission and have that conversation of, I figure finding out what I need. And I'm still discovering even more of that. But and tragically, as Bishop was saying, it's actually taking some of the demise of others around me, or the fall of others around me, some leaving the positions, some, of actually seeing those things and identifying, that's it, that's me. That's it. That's what it is. That's me right there. And so in that work, I'm looking at him, and I mentioned earlier about having my own family members who are law enforcement, is that I'm seeing certain symptoms of things, now, because he's identified some stuff. And then the work that we're doing is being uncovered and identified. And now I'm like, not doing the thing that we usually do, and like, you just need to get yourself together.
Right.
That's not it. Now I'm starting to get an understanding of what's going on because of the involvement in this work. And now I'm seeing how it's playing out, and how this infection is coming through the bloodline of the family, and then how it's basically becoming infective, to other people, and not affected, but infecting, the family members. And so,
Bryson, did you have? Yeah, Bishop, and then Bryson. Let me have you pull you in.
Well, go ahead, Bryson. Oh, you want me to go? Okay.
I don't want you to lose your thought.
Okay. Because, what Pastor Curtis just mentioned, and he labeled it as infection. When you are surrounded by something, you can't help but to be infected by it. When it's on every turn, you have it around. You could try to put up guards to keep it from entering in, but it's going to eventually. And even with the police officer that you're speaking concerning, all that he was dealing with, it was getting in. And if you don't acknowledge and know that it's getting in you, it'll be too late before, until it's really, really bad. And even with your social justice work, if you get surrounded by it all the time, it's going to have an impact on you, a negative one. I'm not talking about a positive one. And you're trying to do positive things. And so I just thought about that when he was speaking concerning that with his family and whatnot.
Yeah. And I appreciate that offering, Bishop Turner. So my comment is, so I'm a reverend. I'm not serving I'm not a pastor leading a church. So the pastors on the call, the bishops, they might be like, this next comment, feel free to be like, nah, I don't agree with it. So a part of my thinking when we're talking about accountability is from my experience in Christian leadership, it seems as if like the flock is rarely dissuaded from taking certain professions, right? And what I mean by that is, so let me back a little. So like the early church, I won't go into a whole rabbit hole, but the early church, I know, like they did not want people to serve in the Roman military, right? Because they thought that they understood it as a death-dealing cult. You know what I mean? That was, an empire that was gobbling up the world. So they said, hey, you can't serve in the military as you're following the slaughtered lamb, right? And I'm wondering, in our contemporary context, we're looking at, officers who are taking their life. We're looking at the cultures of policing that we talked about. And we know that a lot of our folks are going to law enforcement, or they're COs in correctional facilities, because they pay well, it has good insurance, COs, and you can take care of your family, right? So it's not like people are going in to be a CO because they're bad or evil folk, you know what I mean, right? But these things have really deleterious effects on people's spirits and on their psychological well-being. So the question then arises in my mind is, are these professions that we should be steering our folks away from because of the sort of inherent negative effects that they have on folks, right? And so that's kind of like the thought of the question that kind of sparked into my mind, because it seems as if we're rarely like dissuading people from professions unless it's kind of like criminal underworld professions, you know what I mean? Like selling drugs or pimping, you know what I mean? Like kind of obvious things that you don't think that people should be doing, or going to, into the pornographic industry, these things like that. People are kind of quick to say, hey, we shouldn't be doing those things. But there's a whole host of other kind of like respectable professions, that folks may not be suited to go into, so that's kind of something I was thinking about. And I've heard the other side of the argument, like, hey, you know what, we need good people in these spaces too. You know what I mean? I think that's right. I see Bishop that right. And I think that's a very valid point. But so that's kind of like some of just what I was kind of thinking through the conversation with someone said, sparked that in my mind.
When you said that, Bryson, something just came to my mind. So people look at clergy, faith leaders, and they look at it, from their outside external view as like, oh, this is like the position to go after. This is the thing to do. I'm gonna be a pastor. I'm gonna be and they see the limelight of it, and I'm keeping this now still in the contrast that Bishop lifted up earlier. They see the pulpit, they see the suit, they see the glitz and the glamour of it. They see the law enforcement officer, the badge, the uniform, and the power that seems to come. And both of these positions hold power. And so if there is a scary parallel, to that, to the pursuit of that with the wrong heart, intent, and motive. If it's not diagnosed or something that is caught early. Law enforcement screen officers, and a lot of the screening is targeting individuals that are already looking for that kind of power, profiled for that. So that's a flag all in itself, as far as who they're profiling and who they're looking for. So I wanted to take this. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, what I want to lift up in that, Tony did kind of want to say there is that, Pastor Jack and I were having a conversation, and that's what we were discussing is what type of force are you trying to create? So you making that statement, basically, when we know that we've had people, especially Black brothers that have applied for the police department here, no criminal record, outstanding people in the community, didn't make it through the process, so it's almost like this, you ask, well, were you too nice? Was that the issue there? And so, again, not knowing what that looks like, but it's also a radical tension, I call it, between the two, because here in Stockton, they just launched that, what they call that program is the LEAD program, which is an applicant development program where the Noble organization, which is the National Office of Black Law Enforcement, retired officers are a part of that program where they're trying to develop people that will possibly, be people of color coming into the force. And so, there's that thing of, do you put someone into a bad culture? Because as Bishop would say, the infection is already there. How do we cure, the body before we put a new organ in it? Are we going to put, a disease, put something into a disease place already and allow it to just become just as disease as the place is? So, it's almost like we have to look at what's going on right now, because I can't really actively engage or support putting more people into that system. And as Bryson was lifting up, is that and for the Central Valley, we have become a industry. We've become an industry for the criminal justice system, because I can't count the countless members I had that either worked at California Youth Authority, that were working as chaplains in the prison system. All their employed, many friends that they're parole officers, their father were parole officers. So it's become an industry here. And I heard that Officer Kerr in his communication of this video, talking about the profiting, of this situation and the system, that he can't even take that anymore. So I just wrote down a note right here. Somebody profits off of the way that it is. Somebody, and we know this, and that's just to kind of bring it, even more to light, is that's hard to say, Bryson, for me about promoting. But I at this point in culture right now, I can't actively promote yes, I would encourage going into any of those systems right now when I see what results are coming from the
Mm.
disease system right now.
Okay, well, Bishop is at the chip. Go ahead, Bishop.
Bishop,
I
look at I
guess
think you about to jump through
I,
the screen.
I guess I'm in a talkative mood because I don't normally talk this much, but um, and that's wonderful. All of that is wonderful. And my mind went, let me see how I can say this. My mind goes to God called me to pastor in order to assist people to get to know him, to become saved. I would be foolish to think that I would be successful in getting everybody saved. I went into this knowing that even when I leave this earth, there's still going to be people who need to be saved. I think sometimes when we go into these uh, industries, we go in thinking I'm going to be the solution that is going to eradicate whatever
Mm.
and basically you lose your mind or your faculties because you find out that it's bigger than just you, and therefore your mission is not to eradicate, it's to save as many as you can during the time that you are operating. Even in the area of social justice, if you think you're going to get rid of and everything is going to be just, it's not going to be just until Jesus comes, because he is the just individual. But it still does not let you off the hook to not to do the work. You're supposed to do the best you can in bringing about justice in this world, but don't ever take on and think that you're going to eradicate all the injustice that is going on. You just do the best you can. If you go into those areas or those industries with the right mindset, I'm not going to change, I'm just going to change as much as I can. When I go in there, I'm going to work to change, even if it's only a little bit. At least I am doing something to move something towards something. But don't think that you are, even I kept thinking, because my heart just went out when he committed suicide. No, he probably was thinking that I need to eradicate something. No, you cannot do that. You just do the best you can for what the time frame that you have. That's what I'm trying to do.
Can I just say one thing? You know, I thought when I heard Pastor Curtis say, you know, he doesn't feel comfortable at the time sending people into that environment, I couldn't help but think about my father, who was a minister and worked in San Quentin prison for 13 years as a correctional officer. And one of the things he always told me, you know, because I would ask him, how'd you deal with that and not get changed by it? You know, seeing people stabbed to death. My dad worked death row. I was just watching a show with my wife, and Richard Ramirez was on there. I said, my dad used to feed that man. My dad used to feed Charles Manson. So, you know, my dad would say that what I do every day when I clock in and go in that place, I'm not going in there trying to save all those individuals, but my light shines the brightest in the darkness. And so we have to prepare people to go into those spaces to let their light shine. They may not change everything, but they may shine just enough light that other people and other individuals will get on board and start creating the change. So we have to be willing to go into those spaces, even if they're infectious, knowing that we're covered. I mean, we're in a faith space, right? Knowing that who we are in Christ Jesus. You know, if Christ left where he came from and came here into a sinful world and wasn't infected, we can do likewise. It's just a matter of knowing who we are.
Can I, right before I'm gonna get Bryson to jump right in here, and I'm gonna, say this, in that sense is that, and this is for me and my Christian faith in my sense is that you have to know where you're called. You have to know where you're called. You have to know why you're going into and what's going into, and I think that's the piece right there. I won't argue with somebody who said, God, this is my mission. Well, God sent me on this mission, and this is where he has me to go. I will never, ever argue with somebody about what God is calling them to do and where they're calling them to be. You won't see me posting nothing on my Facebook page inviting somebody to an orientation. to go and explore that right now. So that's kind of where I'm at in that sense right now. I believe, like I said, I got my law enforcement cousins, that are in there right now trying to do a great job. I'm looking and checking in on them, encouraging them with them, and they have great support even from their pastors as well and everything. And so in the context of that, I'm just looking at, that's something I wouldn't rah-rah and cheer right now, but definitely I would have counsel, with wise counsel with and make sure that this is something that they're taking. It's like, it's like when you say, what we say when we do weddings, this is not to be entered into lightly. But Bryson.
Nah, I don't have much else to offer. I feel like Pastor Curtis, you summed it up, kind of my feeling, and I definitely appreciate Pastor Hilliard, you lifting up your father's work in as a correctional officer for 13 years. I think that's Pastor Curtis articulated my position a little bit better. That I wouldn't be moving someone into that direction. But if someone was to say, "Hey, God has called me to be, a bright light amongst incarcerated individuals, to treat them fairly," then I'm not going to jump down that person's door and say, "Hey, no." You know what I mean? Like, because I'm not their Lord, right? So, and I'm also, and one of the things that I wrestle with kind of like in general around Christians and where we decide to work is I just think that, there's kind of an overall culture of not sort of maybe pushing folks into maybe more help-centered professions, and folks can kind of, go into whether it's walking on Wall Street, whether it's, moving high up in the middle, like people kind of go into any sort of space, and it's not really kind of reflected upon, well, how is this connected to the life of Christ, to the ministry of Christ, and to the vision of that the visions that the New Testament is putting forth, So yeah, and I'm saying this as someone who just even as a point of transparency, as much as you just heard me before Pastor Turner, Bishop Turner, before you got on, I was critiquing the military. I was talking with my little brother-in-law, right? You know what I'm saying? We've been talking with him because he's trying to figure some things out about the military being an option. And I can't stand the military, you know what I'm saying? And what it stands for, you know what I mean? So, so I'm just, I want to say that in a transparent fashion as to not play the hypocrite, you know what I mean? Because I do see that people are making decisions, you know what I mean, about how they can situate themselves, financially, how they can take care of their families, etc. So I'm not trying to draw like this kind of blanket kind of analysis, but it's just kind of what I've been wrestling with.
Okay, here we go. I'm having a little problem with my screen here. One thing I wanted to kind of lead us in is this, I mentioned earlier, Bishop, is that, these are discussions definitely that are not resolved, I should say, within, an hour's periods of time, and have taken, I should say, many years of discussion, in there. It's just that there's just moments in time that we just can't ignore, like what's going on. And this was one. In the scheme, in the way things have, turned out, even within our own context of our own city, most of us all stood together on the city hall steps at the beginning of this year in support of a family whose minor son, 17-year-old son, was beaten by the police officers here in the Stockton Police Department. What really, I should say, struck me is that when Bryson was talking about the culture of death, and when we were talking about, in our context here in this call about the culture of death, the way that the infection basically, takes over, the person. And so all I could think of was how if the officers have a high rate of domestic violence in their own home, the person that they say that they love, the person that they say that they've had children with, and they're beating that person, their wives, then what is it, that you go out with this hypervigilant state, and what is it going to be? Because, I've also seen that when we are also seen mostly to the time as a male, especially, that minor, he was, 6 foot, over 6 feet tall and all these different things, probably not seen as a minor child, but also we've been also in our implicit bias trainings, it has also been studied, and also results have come out, findings that when they see Black males, they see that we're resilient. They see that we can stand a lot of pain based on our historic culture of slavery and things, that we can tolerate, these types of things. But also they're also taking a whole lot out, right, in every one of those blows. And so it's the context. It's so complex. But what really resonates, as to say, is that when this man, Officer Kerr, made his video on the 31st, the very last one, there was about 3 of them out here. The very last one, the one we showed, was a clip from the one he made on January 31st, the end of 2020. And we know all the stuff that was going on in that year. You talk about trauma. It was, we all know that last year was just traumatic for a lot of people. So you got this context. You got him making this on the last day of the year, that night, 10 minutes before the 31st came in on the 30th, we get the call from our national director that wants us to look into this situation, to where the police department has stopped this young man, 17-year-old young man, and that they're worried because the parents aren't being allowed to see this young man. And at that point, we don't know any details of what has happened, but I'm looking at the close proximity, and on the same day, we have this man who can't take it anymore, the police brutality. And the quote that he made in his statement is that, this is my protest against police brutality and everything else that comes along with it. This broken, wicked, worldly system that does not give a damn about people. This is my protest. And so as he is making a protest, it has no idea that here in Stockton, that day, we are trying to figure out what's going on with this young man. That day, around the time that he's making this video, we are getting information finally back about what had occurred, and that the beating that had taken place on this young man by police officers here in our own city. So you got Louisiana, now we got California, and we know that it's pandemic before the pandemic, came out. And so with that, I should say the context of that is that I wanted to kind of lift up is that what he saying, those list of things that he listed out are in alignment. They're concurrent with the things that we stood together and proclaimed on the steps of City Hall, the demands and things that we listed out, that we didn't just make these, about the incident. We made this about the system. And it's something that we've been resonating throughout the country, that these asks have been going forward and these demands have been making place. And so in our state, as being the moral compass, I should say, for these things that are going on, or these officers that we know, or know the chiefs and all the different entities that are involved, even encouragement. There's been a great encouragement for the family itself, and and being able to help in that sense, is that how do we as faith leaders, then basically become the prophetic voice also to reimagine, and then also to create what's needed so that we're able to survive. Okay, double Dutch.
No, that's an extremely big question. How do we become so? Who do we need to become? Is that in essence the question? Who do we need to become? Abolition? Do we need to uproot and start from scratch? Do we deal with the infection from the inside out? Do we approach it like cancer? And so that can be just the question that we use to wrap up. When you imagine where we need to go as faith leaders spiritually, when you're praying and seeking God in regard to the insurmountable amount of trauma and things that are taking place within policing in the community, what are some ideas, what are some thoughts that come to mind as a faith leader and a clergy on where we need to go?
I'll go, excuse my tardiness, and good to see everybody on here, all the giants in the community and in the faith. I'm so honored to be on. But Pastor Curtis, that is an amazing question that you posed. And one of the things that I believe as a pastor that we need to do as faith leaders in order to be that prophetic voice in matters and times like this is to remember that our assignment is to preach the gospel first. Before Democrat, before Republican, before any political party, our assignment is to preach the word of God as faith leaders and do just that. Preach the Bible, preach Jesus. And we know that Jesus and the Bible talks about justice, you know, and I echo this all the time. The Bible has countless of scriptures as relates to standing up for justice, standing up for those who can't speak for themselves. And what I've seen is that a lot of clergy, depending upon what candidate is in office, depending upon what circumstances are tied to our finances, we could be in a position to where we're now picking a side instead of staying neutral. You know, whether it's a person that's from our church that's running for office, or whether it's a person who we knew when they were a kid. The main point is that no matter which side, our assignment is to be neutral. And I believe that when we take a neutral standpoint, it'll give us the ability to freely speak up against things that take place, freely speak up against things that are plaguing our community. A lot of the silence isn't because, you know, we don't like justice, but a lot of times I've seen silence based upon who we are aligned with and who we are affiliated with. So I think that there has to be a cleansing amongst the people and the body of faith, the clergy per se, as relates to, you know, we're not here to pick sides. I don't care if you're Democrat. I don't care if you're Republican. My responsibility is to pray for you. It was baffling to have people message me when we got a new mayor, and I got questions like, are you going to be praying for the mayor, or are you going to meet with the mayor? Absolutely. My job is to pray for no matter who is in office. Our job as faith believers is to stand on that front from a place of faith. So I believe that when we get that concept as faith leaders, that neutrality, then I think it'll give us the freedom to freely speak up against these type of injustices.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, brother Scroggins. Yeah, there's a few thoughts. So I do agree with Pastor Scroggins when he says that, you know, pastors and folks of faith don't need to be neutral in the sense of neutral around party affiliation, right? We shouldn't sort of be lock in step with the Democratic Party. We should be lock in step with the Republican Party. But I don't think that we should be necessarily neutral, right? You know what I mean? Because I don't know, when I read, you know, the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, I don't see a God that's neutral. I see a God that is actually on the side of the oppressed. So I'm a liberationist. So I'm in the tradition of James Cone, right? Who understands that God aligns himself with oppressed peoples. Through the Exodus account, you can see that God clearly takes sides. Through God coming, you know, within the Christian faith tradition, believing that Jesus is the incarnate Word of God, that God chooses to come into the world. The Logos chooses to come into the world as an impoverished Jew at the bottom of the Roman Empire. You know, the child of a teenage daughter who is the lowest in the empire, right? So God is making a very distinct sort of claim about where God is located in the world. So that's kind of my theological orientation as a liberationist. So for me, that what that means though is that translates into, for me, neutrality isn't necessarily an option, right? And so as much as I do agree that we need to be praying for elected officials, I'm not gonna, you know, I'm trying to be honest today, Bishop Turner. So I'm trying not to be a hypocrite, just be honest with it. But you know, I stopped praying for Donald Trump. I did. You know what I'm saying? I stopped. You know what I'm saying? And right? I did. You know, my prayer, I didn't pray for him to be, sort of secure in his position. I didn't do any of that. I prayed that he be removed from office because he's a force of evil. You know what I mean? So my prayer took a very, sort of biased form of like, this person is problematic. You know what I mean? And he used to go, in my mind, like the kings of old in the Old Testament, in the book of Kings, there would arise, these demonic, evil kings, you know what I'm saying, over against some of the righteous kings. So, so to me, Trump was that person. Now, I'm not partisan in the sense of like, oh, Biden is the righteous president, you know what I mean, who is in lock and step with the kingdom, because I don't believe that either, you know what I mean? But for me, just kind of like, neutrality is difficult for me to espouse to when there's so much that's on the line. I think that there needs to be sides that are chosen, but not to what Brother Scott is to me is properly lifting up, not in a partisan sense, but I do think sort of kind of like where we are nationally, that, as problematic as a Democratic Party is, and it is, you know what I mean? They're not a white nationalist party like the Republican Party, right? So there really is kind of on clear display one party that really doesn't have a general interest in moving the country in a collective way forward for a country that works on behalf of everyone. And that is kind of like the more conservative model at this moment. The Democrats kind of hold to that particular role, that they're not as bad, so we need to move them further down the line and progress them too. You know what I'm saying? So, so I don't know. I'm saying all that to kind of say, like, for me, neutrality is not an option. In terms of like kind of a continued theological vision or, kind of a moral vision, Tony, I'm compelled by, the images of Isaiah and the images at the end of Revelation, right? I'm compelled by those images and the vision of a world where, conflict isn't at in this vision, there is no conflict, but conflict definitely isn't at the root of the human experience. Now, as a believer who believes in a literal second coming of Christ, I do believe, like Bishop Turner lifted up, that reality won't fully come into being until the full presence of God emanates into every aspect of the world. You know what I mean? But I got to work towards that reality. You know what I mean? In the here and now. You know what I mean? I have to work towards that reality. I got to shoot for the stars. I might not hit the stars, but I might hit the moon, right? So if we work with the thought of like, we can create the best world possible, it may not be a utopian society, but it'll definitely be better than the one that we have. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I'm compelled by those visions to go forward, believing, dare I say knowing, you know what I mean? But believing that God is already on the other side of that, waiting for us to arrive in the future that God has already created. So those are some of the visions that I'm compelled by, and that's why I do the work of organizing, and that's why I do the work of working and walking alongside clergy folks. I do believe that we can do a much grander job at working towards those eschatological visions, realizing them in the now.
Yeah, let me give some redress real quick.
Wait. I'm sorry, Bishop. Wait. Bishop.
What?
Were you getting ready to speak?
Not right now, no.
Okay, all right.
I think I played out all my talking. I don't.
Bishop, you do body language talk. I just watch my. So look, when you
Bishop has his own prepaid minutes. He's like, I use all my prepaid minutes.
Bishop was shaking his legs and moving, and then he do this thing where he looked like he finna speak, and it was something that was there. Okay, so I just want to make sure that I'm creating space because we're doing a wrap up here.
Okay.
I keep forgetting that Elder Tony was on salary at Bishop's church, so she know Bishop like the back of her hand.
No. I was not on salary, bruh. I don't want the community to think that. But I was on staff. There's a difference because when you're on salary, there's an obligation to money. But when you're on staff and called to do a thing, you're obligated because it's what you're called and passionately purposed to do. And so I was on staff, passionately purposed for 17 years to do a thing. So I was not obligated by the almighty dollar.
That's right. And we
Hey, that's
thank God that
great
that staff,
distinction.
we thank God that that staff provided a salary. Hallelujah. Listen, let me give you my redress. I'm not playing with y'all today. Let me give you my redress. But listen, I definitely understand what my brother is saying. And, you know, I always get enamored that I'm always invited on to panels like this. I'm going to be honest. I did not graduate from a prestigious college or anything like that, but I got the Holy Ghost. But let me tell you, my belief, just to clear it up, because when Pastor Curtis posed the question, our job as clergy, I mean, when we are protesting, of course, especially those of us that are connected to Faith in the Valley, we have the heart for the people. That's the reason why we're out here doing what we're doing. But while we're in the streets, we know that everyone in the streets in the community does not have the same type of mindset that we have as leaders, especially faith leaders. So although we have a heart for the people, there still is a distinction in our assignment as spiritual vessels as we operate and move. So when I'm talking about neutrality, I'm not talking about going all the way into, you know, how when we were out here in Stockton, they wanted to burn it up. That was the community's heart, right? Now, although that was probably in the back of my ratchet mind as well, let's do some stuff. But my assignment has to cause me to come to a point of neutrality from the perspective of what is God saying, because everyone in the community does not have a spiritual mindset. Everyone in a political office does not have a spiritual mindset. So bringing those things together, standing in the gap in order to provide some clarity as it relates to what is our assignment as a people in order to move forward. I'm just built with the conviction that no matter who is in office, my spiritual assignment, as much as I don't want it, I had to correct myself in my church, you know, because I would be preaching and I would say things like 45 or whatever the case is. But at the end of the day, I cannot choose where my prayers are dictated when I am in a spiritual office. It just don't work like that. So, you know, I definitely believe in, you know, making sure that we have the ability to pray for everybody across the board. But listen, God, Jesus, I say this all the time. You see the majority of his ministry not in the church, not dealing with the system, not dealing with the structure, but he's out there in the streets, in the community. So that's why, you know, as faith leaders, it is important, you know, for us to be out in the streets, do what Faith in the Valley is giving us the luxury and ability to do that happens outside of the church. The young man that Pastor Curtis is talking about, Devin, he's never been a member of my church, but ever since the press conference at City Hall, we've been on social media talking to each other, conversing back and forth about what he's going through, how he's taking things, how, you know, he should stay focused, how God is with him, you know, all these different things, but it's taking place right there outside of the church. So I just wanted to definitely clear that up as it relates to the neutrality aspect, just from my vantage point on the question that was asked.
Pastor Leon, I love you for real. You know what? Let me tell you, it's a shepherd's view. Look, you get that book that Bishop wrote about the shepherd's view, that right there. From a prophet's perspective, we're going to call a spade a spade. I'm for sure. Surely. Fire and brimstone. Fix it, it's wrong. Correct that thing. We need to get it together. Call a spade a spade. Call sin, sin, and evil, evil. And that doesn't mean throw away the baby and the bathwater. That means if there is a way to extrapolate the baby from within the bathwater, then let's do that, because that's what my faith calls me to do. I feel like that's what love calls it to do. I don't hate the police. I don't hate Donald Trump. I absolutely hate the evil he was operating in, struggled with praying for him, and prayed as the Lord led me by the Spirit of the utmost to do. And I'm not going to go down the rabbit trail as to how, because this isn't about Trump. This is about corrupt policing that is embedded deeply in a system of white supremacy and racism that is in our history. And so that's why we have officers killing themselves and dying left and right. And you see stuff still taking place, and it's want to hide it and sweep sin under the rug and act like it's not there and find other systems in order to, because you're benefiting from it. So at the end of the day, that's wrong. We're not saying the person's wrong. We're saying what you are partnered with, what you are doing, what is existing and driving you is wrong, evil, and corrupt. We're calling that out. That needs to be addressed and changed. And how do you do it in love from a faith perspective? Pastor Jack, let me have you, whatever, Bishop and Pastor Curtis, and then we go tap out.
I'll just say this. Yesterday I taught on Jesus being the way, the truth, and the life. And as Pastor Leon said, I think our primary responsibility is to preach Christ and represent Christ and his kingdom. But I will say this on the issue of neutrality. I don't believe that we're called to be neutral. Pastor Leon, wasn't here when I talked about Joshua being confronted by the angel of the Lord. And the angel of the Lord didn't take a side, but he wasn't neutral. He was very clear. I'm here to represent the king and his army. And so that's our responsibility. If we do that, we'll be okay. You won't have to choose a side. Just make sure we're representing our king.
Good stuff. Amen. Pastor Curtis?
Don't leave me laugh.
Bishop Turner?
I got action steps. Let Bishop go.
He don't
Praise the Lord. This is what I
me.
want y'all to do.
Bishop Turner? And then Pastor Curtis, you can wrap us up, close us out.
I am surprised that even how this has been a wonderful discussion, and I appreciate the invitation to be a part of this panel. And it's just wonderful to see each and every last one of you. If I recall, I always pick up on key things, and it said prophetic vision. And one thing that I have, which means that you got to speak something into to what you expect to be the end result. Because what I've discovered concerning vision is that God will give you vision, but there is so many dynamics associated with it. When it comes and it manifests itself, it's not exactly how you saw it at the very beginning, but you do recognize many of the elements of what God has revealed at the beginning of it, because he doesn't tell you what's going to happen in between. He gives you the end result, and you have to navigate your way all the way to the end, what the vision is. And so in order to reimagine what we can create, we can do the best we can and visualize none of this evil stuff going on, and no one committing suicide to make a point. That all of what we have been called to do will manifest itself as much as possible to where we can see elements of love and peace and understanding and tolerance and all of these things in the world and in the atmosphere that we find ourselves in. Every time I see injustice, something on the inside of me kind of breaks or makes me want to say I have to do something about it. Even though I know I can't do anything about that one, I want a world where everyone will not become numb to all of this stuff that is going on. And so the prophetic voice that we have will speak to wake up everybody so they will not go to sleep and accept this as the norm. I guess that's the best one.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
Amen.
That's really good.
We're going to amen on that. And that is what I'm going to use this time to wrap this up, not to answer that question, because it has been something to drop the mic on. Bishop just dropped the mic, as I just said. But thank you for all that. Thank you for each and every one of you. couple of things, in wrapping this up is that, Mr. told us, we can't get up thinking that we're going to save the world, we're going to eradicate it. And I want to encourage everyone is that why nothing grows in isolation. When we talk about the pastors that end up in a situation where they end up in an asylum, or they end up, committing suicide, that's because they were alone. When we were talking about organizing, community organizing, faith-based organizing, we are doing this to bring us together, to basically build bridge and belong, to building bridges between congregation, the concrete, the community, the elected officials. That's what we're doing. And as a collective, we understand we can do more together than we can do that on our own and our part. As I said about somebody profiting the way that it is, somebody also profits if we stay separate. Someone also profits, and basically there are different attempts. We have seen it made within some of our newer organizations that they will go into meetings and that they will bring up some of the other organizations that they're connected to and try to cause discord. Because again, if we're going to talk on the spiritual level, let's understand that division, enemy has always used, that as a tool, to divide. And in the organizing context of the world, or I should say, an organizing statement says that an organized lie will always outweigh disorganized truth. An organized lie will outweigh disorganized truth. And so we are talking about truth, right? We're talking about what we know, but we do that better when we are working together, even in the context of where we hang out, right? Because when we're talking about where we've learned how, and I should say just in our current upbringing, just in our current of being a part of the Christian community, we've learned how to disagree and still walk in the same, headed towards the same place, right? And so I'm saying that in as far as a call out, to those who are on this call listening, and then to those who are going to watch this as we get it out there, is that these are the things that we are lifting up, or issues that this is broken. The guy, Mr. Kerr, Officer Kerr lifted, he said, broken and wicked worldly system. And so what we are talking about is that, how do we fix what is broken? How do we bring good to evil? And how do we basically bring light, to darkness, and everything like that, repairing. And so here, within San Joaquin, we have this issue we mentioned, Mr. Carter, that Pastor Leon just mentioned, is that, this is going to be something we're going to be hearing more about. And, we want to say that we're not just looking at just the isolated incident, because, again, we're talking about a system that's in place, and we cannot change the system by ourselves. But there's a reason why we are called to this time period in this moment in history. No, I'm doing a long wrap up, but I had to actually talk to my grandparents. Look at that. I'm looking at that. That's the pastoral part right there. I'm going to close 3 times. But I had to ask my grandparents, really. I had to go ask my grandparents who grew up here. They weren't born here, but they lived here in Stockton for 60-something years. I had to go ask them some questions about where I live and what I see going on right now. So I don't make the assumptions, because we tend a lot to make assumptions about what the church was doing, how they were acting. Why don't they do this anymore, when that wasn't what was going on? That wasn't what was happening. And so when we're talking about coming together, we as Faith in the Valley, basically, what we're doing is basically allowing people to, here's the information that, that we're seeing. This is what we can do together in order that we can help, change some of these things, or make it so. Tony just put it up there. The Stockton Police Accountability Table is where the community can come there and actually engage in conversations that we're developing these strategies, and also bringing in the police department and members and the chief and people like that in order to have these discussions, so that we can talk about, these things, and that we can actually say, no, this is what the community is saying and what we want to do. There's also, strategies that are being put in place that our community has come together and saying that there's change that needs to happen in the way we do policing. It's the Rochester, New York incident that just happened with the 9-year-old girl who was pepper sprayed in the back of the car because they called out and said she was going to commit suicide, and she ended up being pepper sprayed and thrown into the back of a police car. 9-year-old girl who needed some mental help, right? Not a cell, not a jail cell, but mental health. So Carl Stockton, you see that's scrolling on the screen right now, is basically the answer to that in the Stockton area of that introduces a new way or a new, I should say, even kind of way of policing and handling the calls that do not need that type of response. I could just say that they don't call for that type of response that could lead to this deadly situation, or detrimental or cause harm. We need to cause healing. And so, in the thought of that process of Pastor Leon, what you were saying about us as faith leaders, a lot of times we'll hear the statement, hurt people, right? But seldom do we add on there is that healed people heal people. And so this is, kind of the way that I'm calling forth there. And so we do have conversations going on. We do have things that are definitely happening, because a lot of people say, well, what's going on? What are you doing? And a lot of times these are isolated conversations when we actually need to come together and start having them more. I want to thank all you clergy that came on this, and that won't be the last time, we weren't able to solve the world's problems today. But definitely, in the concept, let's be praying for these families, especially the Kerr family right now in the time of their specific loss. The Carter family that's going through the situation right now in our own city. Let's lift these families up in prayer and support, and then get in touch with us as Faith in the Valley if you want to find out, what can I do? What can I do? And that's all I have. Again, thank you. Tony.
Y'all make me laugh. Give a clergy a mic, and it's just look. Y'all don't blame me, okay? It's I'm in clergy land right now, and they all Trump, no pun intended. Woo! Anyway, no, I am extremely appreciative of each one of you guys for stopping time in order to come together. This is a lot that is going on in the community, and the community wants to hear from our faith leaders. The community really does want to hear your voice. What you have to say matters to them, and they do tune in. When you speak, because God has called you authentically and truly, when you speak, your words carry a significant amount of weight. And sometimes I think the natural man part, of our faith leaders shies away from the fact that there is so much richness, so much worth, and so much value in the weight of your voices when you speak to the community. So I appreciate you guys coming into this space and just giving voice and word that the people can lean into. And it won't be the last time. I just have to, we got to be strategic in how we pull y'all in so that we don't have so much deepness in one space at the same time.
Can I just say too, real quick, Tony, real fast? I want to say too, I just appreciate, the other thing that they also need to see, and what was rich, is they need to see the difference of views and the difference of opinions. We don't need to come on here and seem that it's been scripted, and seem that, we have this and we're pushing, because a lot of times that's the expectation. They expect us to get on here and that we are pushing an agenda, we are pushing a campaign, and we're going to come on like we have the answer. We know exactly what that is, and this is what it is, and you better do that, right? No, but if they can see us that we're engaging and also discovering and learning and growing right in front of them, right? And that's a level of, I should say, vulnerability, and also a level of transparency that we provide, because we have to be the example of what we're trying to see and demand and ask for.
All right, y'all. So reach out to me, Tony McNeil at faithinthevalley.org. On Facebook, it's just Tony McNeil. Ain't nothing, but Tony, Toni McNeil. Inbox me if you're interested in being a part of the police accountability table. We really are working with law enforcement. We really are doing some things. And www.callstockton.com. It's in the link. Go on there. We definitely want you to know more about that in order to find out what we're doing in order to change the face of policing, even locally. And so we love y'all, and we will tap in with you down the line. Peace.
Right.